me.
Mm, mm. So just a really quick intro to this series of conversations that we've been running over the last few weeks. So for anyone who doesn't know, I'm Hannah Risco. I'm a somatic healing therapist and coach. And in the lead up to an upcoming 8-week program that I'm running called the Resourced and Resilient Woman, I wanted to bring together a whole just bunch of voices and conversations to talk about chronic stress, burnout, embodied resilience. What the hell does that even mean? Like, and starting to look at it, we've gone through the lens of neurodivergency, human design, heart math, building a business and staying regulated, and building resilience. And today we have Tamu Thomas in this conversation. Why we work too hard, why we find ourselves in these cycles of being depleted, burnt out, stressed time and time again, and what to start doing about it. I found your work, Tammy, around 4 years ago, and I was just instantly drawn to just this deeply loving, passionate, straight talking voice within this within this industry, and taking a somatic and nervous system informed approach as well. She also speaks to the conditioning, expectations, and conditions we find ourselves working in, and how to understand and unpack and start to untangle ourselves from what's really going on. And not just being women, but the intersection between gender and race, both on a social, societal, political, and an individual lens. Um, I share often with my clients that taking care of ourselves so that our needs are like actually met is a form of rebellion in itself against so many systems in place that want us to keep on running and keep on being depleted as
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
So I can't wait to get your voice and your heart and your words into this. Um, I'm always a little bit apprehensive when I introduce people, so I will do my best. But if I miss anything, then please fill in the gaps. So with over 15 years in social work, you moved into coaching because you wanted a more peaceful and pleasurable life. And I love your commitment you wrote on your website about becoming a well-rested woman and helping others to do the same. Tamu is also an author of Women Who Work Too Much, Break Free from Toxic Positivity and Find Your Joy. And it will be available from the 5th of March. I've got mine on pre-order already, and I can't wait to get my hands on it and start devouring it. And I suggest that everyone go and do the same. So you can just tell from the title alone, you can see why I asked Tamu to bring her wisdom into this. So Tamu, please fill anything I may have missed. And
I think that's all good.
and before we properly dive in, tell us a little bit about what led you to be doing the work you do now.
Exactly what you're talking about. Chronic stress and burnout led me to doing the work I do. So I became a social worker because I'm very passionate about social justice. And I believe in human beings' capacity to change if they are supported. I wouldn't have had those words at the time, but that is what led me to social work.
Yeah.
And my mum was a foster carer, and I saw the way children in care were treated, and I thought I could do things differently. So I did that, and I was very passionate. I'm still passionate about that field, the work, the people that are supported by social workers. But I got to a point where, because again, a systemic issue at play, because social work departments, local authorities are grossly underfunded, in order to do the job justice and to provide adequate support for children and their families, you were often overworking. So chronic stress was a badge of honor. If you were not pacing around the office, running from appointment to appointment, if your car wasn't full of chips and crisps and apple cores because you're eating on the road, then you weren't doing the role properly.
Yeah.
And something that was one of the final straws. I was working for a local authority, and I realised I was at my probationary period was over. It might have been three. I think it was 6 months, because usually it's about 6 months in social work. And I was celebrating. I was like, probation's over, and one of my colleagues said, "Does that mean you're going to stop being happy now?" They were actually offended by me being happy and bouncing around the office. Um, and I just thought, well, I'm not going to like deliberately be miserable. And the people I work with, they are experiencing real difficulty. They are experiencing real stress. However, that thought, the people I'm working with are experiencing real difficulty, they're experiencing real stress, made me set the bar for stress so high or low, whichever way you want to look at it, that I didn't recognize my own until my body started sending me signals and signs to say, you cannot carry on like this. I also think that 38 is a significant age for women. The women I've worked with, when I've talked about 38, they're like, oh my goodness, like, yes, it was the thread that was being really tightly held together starts to unravel at 38. And I was experiencing my own existential crisis, but in denial, because I couldn't be experiencing anxiety because I don't look like what my clients with anxiety look like. I could not be experiencing depression or low mood because I can get out of bed, I can function, I take my child to all of her extracurricular activities, etc.
Yeah.
So I was in total denial. But in 2015, I decided to leave full-time social work and become an independent social worker, thinking that would support me to create more balance in my life because I could select the work I was doing. It just wasn't happening. I was ill all the time. I went to the GP because I just thought, this isn't right. I haven't liked myself for ages. Like, I've had very loud, critical talk about myself for a long time. Went to the GP and got a referral to the mental health services, and cut that story short, I was told that I was experiencing severe moderate depression, so a severe level of moderate depression, anxiety, and basically my unchecked depression had led to anxiety, and what I was calling heightened periods of anxiety were actually panic attacks.
Yeah.
So it really culminated with a panic attack when I was on my way to court. I was giving evidence in a contentious case, which was normal. You know, I pride myself still on doing everything I could to try and support families to stay together, so that when I was making my recommendations, they were balanced and fair, and I could clearly demonstrate everything that had been done to support families. So if I was saying the family couldn't remain together, we had literally come to the end of the line. So it wasn't that, but the combination of a number of factors and me just not looking after myself led to me having a panic attack it was in Canary Wharf. I got off a Jubilee line, felt like I was going to fall down the escalator because all of a sudden it felt like I didn't have knees. Made it to a bus stop, there with my fancy designer bag, my shoes that were polished, pencil skirt suit with like a really nice peplum blazer, and I was holding on to the bus stop because I thought I was going to die. And I was thinking, should I call an ambulance? But still I was like, this is ridiculous. Pull yourself together. You don't need an ambulance. And so I just thought, that is not normal. So I went to the GP, was told that, and then they referred me for CBT. Being a social worker, I knew I didn't need CBT. CBT is what they recommend because it's the cheapest form of therapy that NHS can offer. And I was like, no, this feels, I didn't have the word existential. It felt primal. It felt spiritual. It felt more than mental. Literally, my body was saying, all that energy you have borrowed to overwork, to overgive, to overplease, all of that overing you've been doing, the time is up. My body was like a bailiff come to collect its debt, and it wasn't letting me get away with it. And then I went to the GP, and basically I saw another GP who was an Asian woman, and she also explained that those things were going on, and those things were the kind of like mental health. But she she insisted on doing a blood test, and my vitamin D was chronically low, and my neutrophils, which are a type of white blood cell that helps with your immune system, because I was always fighting some kind of illness due to the chronic stress, my neutrophils were very low. So my immune system was depleted. My liver function was poor. And she said your magnesium's probably like through the floor as well. And it was really important for me to have that from her, because as a woman of color, she was able to identify a biological factor as well as the mental. And I think that planted a seed, and that's what led me to the world of somatics as well as the social work. Because with the social work, we're working holistically with the whole person. We would not just use mindset strategies to try and support a person, because that's not enough. Like I knew that trauma lived in the body, although within social work at that time, I'm not sure about now, there wasn't like trauma education in the way we have trauma education now. So I could see my experience reflected in women around me, women in my family, friends, TV, media, social media, it was everywhere. And I thought, well, it can't just be me. It can't be a me thing. It can't be that I'm not managing my time effectively and all of these other things we beat ourselves over the head with. I thought there's something bigger at play. And I thought I could use my social work skills to support women who were experiencing similar. And I went and did a positive psychology course and was speaking to the lecturer about doing a coaching qualification. And at that time, people weren't so into coaching qualifications. And he was like, social workers are the coaches of the therapeutic world. You don't need that. Coaching certification is not going to teach you anything you don't know already. In fact, you'll probably be frustrated because you know more. But you know, the good girl conditioning was there, and also positive psychology led me to somatics. And the divine just provides for me all the time. So like when I decided to be a social worker, I had that conversation with my mum at the weekend. On Thursday, I opened the local newspaper. There was a half-page ad for trainee social workers, applied for it, got the job. When I started exploring somatics and started hearing all of this stuff about how the nervous system is the foundation for who we are and what we do, I opened Facebook and there was an advert for the somatic school. Immediately, I just knew that was the place. Nathan, the founder of the somatic school, kept trying to get, because everything was in person then, kept trying to get me to come to, did you just see those balloons?
Yeah, I don't know what
I
happened.
don't know why that happens. This happened on another. I don't know what's going on. But okay, surprise! Celebration! That's a sign for you all to go and check out the somatic school. So he kept trying to get me to go into one of their open days. And I was like, listen, when I know, like when my intuition knows, I know, I said, I don't need to go to a open day. Just let me know how much I've got to pay. Is there a payment plan available? Where do I make payment? Like, you know, when you just know, you
Yeah.
just know. So I did that. And I would say, like, I talk about the somatic school in my book because not just the education, but the environment, and Nathan, the founder, had such a huge impact on my life. The first session we had, I was raging because I realized that. So, one of my phrases is, we don't need more self improvement, we need systemic change. I realized that the system in which I was brought up, that conditioned my parents, that conditioned their parents, created an environment where I normalized blaming myself individually for things that were systemic. So when we're having, sorry, I've got so much to say, but when we're
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about
go.
chronic stress, overwhelm, people pleasing slash codependency and all of that, we talk about it in the personal development space and as individuals like it's a slight on our path, like it's a failing of us. It is not. We have been conditioned to behave in this way. And this book is focused on women, but there's a little section about how what I refer to as the trinity of oppression, capitalism, patriarchy, and white supremacy, how it impacts men too. Men do not benefit from a system that oppresses women and non-binary people. They do not benefit. And women of color, women of the global majority, and black women specifically, suffer even more because of the intersection of misogyny and racism. And then you can add all the other ones, the disability, if you are non-heterosexual and all of that kind of stuff. It adds layers upon layers upon layers. And with my work, what I want to support people to understand. It's not about being in victim consciousness. Oh my gosh, the system. It's not about saying, oh my gosh, the system's so big, I can't do anything about it. It's about looking. It's about telling yourself the truth about what's going on around you so that you can start to make powerful decisions about what is yours, what isn't yours, and working with the genius of our species, connection and belonging, to unite so that together we can do our individual work, we can do our collective work so that we can make the change that needs to be made. Systemic change requires collective action. We can't do it on our own, and as the most pro-social creatures on this planet, we're not supposed to do it on our own. We're not designed that way.
No. Oh, yes.
Breathe.
Yeah.
I just
take a breath
saw
with
something.
you.
Hold on. Magdalena, thank you for showing this. I believe this is what I'm experiencing and I'm in denial, delay going for help. Magdalena, let me tell you something, right? Going for help, denial keeps you in a state of mystery where you're guessing and tiptoeing around things and avoiding anything that feels spiky. When you actually get that support, knowing what it is provides a sense of relief because you now know what you're dealing with and you can do something about it. And I'll be totally straight with you, Magdalena, the first time I went to see the therapist I'm working with now was in 2016. I was terrified. I'm not even going to say I was scared. I was terrified. I hope there were no kids around. I was shit scared. So I saw her in 2016. I didn't start working with her until 2020. Right? It took me 4 years to work with her. In between that time, I did my own growth stuff and I did coaching. And the more coaching I did, the more I realized I needed therapeutic support because coaching deals with the top and the therapeutic stuff deals with what's going on beneath. And the therapeutic work I do with my therapist, and I'm still in therapy. We started in 2020. I'm still in therapy, but the work I do with my therapist, and she's an all-round baddie, so it's not just mental, has enabled me to face the stuff that felt so uncomfortable, and facing that stuff has enabled me to utilize coaching. So I just want to say, I'm going off track. If any of you have considered coaching or have done a number of coaching programs and have felt like you're not making progress, the coaching hasn't worked, I implore you to seek out therapy because that is going to unlock what's going on underneath so that you can start doing the growth work that happens on top. So, and you can absolutely have therapy and coaching simultaneously, especially if you're working with somebody like Hannah or me, because it is not all about, you got to wake up at 5 a.m., you got to beat your demons, you got to pass your this, that, and the other. And I don't know about Hannah, but for me, I will say, not take this to your therapist as in you can't bring it to the coaching. All of you is welcome in the coaching, but I will always say, I think that you should also take this to your therapist so that you can explore it there, so that we're working together and the therapist knows what you're doing in the coaching arena.
Oh, 100%. And it's like, to really be able to, I don't really like the term to do the work, but in order to really get into what's going on behind the scenes, like that embodied sense of it and safe enough in our nervous system to even tap on the door of that. And I think if we can just dance around it, we can kind of tap on the door of it. And there is benefits to tapping on the door of it and finding where our boundaries are, finding where our comfort zones are instead of trying to blast through it. But when you're ready, saying that it took kind of 4 years for you to go to therapy, when you're ready and you've tapped on the door enough, and that safety is embodied in you, then you can go through. Yeah. And it's something that is like, do you know what? Slow is the fast way. Pace
100%
is the masterful way, for want of a better word. I've got so many questions, and just allowing all those words to land as well. What can we do to start rewriting this?
First of all, we need to slow down. As you just said, the slow way is the fast way. Yeah. We need to slow down. So The culture in which we live, everything is fast, everything needs to be efficient, everything needs to be done yesterday. And what that does, I don't know if you've ever watched those nature programs where you've got lizards that look like they're running on water, but it's because they're going so fast that they look like they're gliding across the surface. The conditions in which we live just keep us gliding along the surface, and that gliding along the surface conditions us to ignore what's going on beneath the surface. So, what's going on beneath the surface, rather than being a source of wisdom, a wellspring of truth, becomes a shadow.
Yeah.
So, if you slow down, you're worried that you're going to be deemed as lazy and unproductive. And in our culture, where work and grind is the new religion, lazy is like a big time sin.
Yeah.
And because we're taught needs are needy, you're high maintenance, you can't cope. Emotions, unless they're happy, happy, joy, joy, are an inconvenience, they get in the way of everything. And realizing you don't like something means you're going to have a boundary in place, and boundaries are conflated with being mean and not being nice and all of that kind of stuff. We also don't have the skill, we don't have the capacity to manage what feels uncomfortable. Brené Brown teaches us you can't selectively numb emotions. I'll say you can't selectively numb your experience. So whilst we're treading on that water and we are avoiding what feels uncomfortable because we call it negative, we also numb our capacity to experience what we feel, or we would describe as joyful or positive. And that looks like not slowing down enough to recognize what you've done, to celebrate yourself so you savor it and are able to actually take it in and recognize what you've done. So then you just feel like I haven't done enough because you're not registering what you've done. It means that, again, quoting Brené Brown, we forebode joy because it will get pulled, the rug will get pulled from underneath us. We don't want to get too happy because it's all going to get taken away from us, or we think that savoring and satisfaction is going to lead to complacency. And we also believe we need to really work hard and grind to be deserving of joy, to be deserving of happiness, to be deserving of value, to be deserving of value, to be seen as worthy. So it feels uncomfortable for us to acknowledge our own joy, our own beauty, our own pleasure, especially in a patriarchal society that says, you woman, me man, tell you, you beautiful. Me man, tell you, you worthy. Me man, tell you, you are good because you are being a martyr.
Yeah.
So all of that feels uncomfortable. So in addition to slow down, my invitation would be to find an aligned community. And by aligned, I don't mean people who are going to collude with you and agree with everything, people who are going to lovingly challenge you, people who are going to lovingly call you in, people who are going to hold up a mirror so that you can see the grandest version of yourself. So it's not just about slowing down, it's about being in community, because again, we're the most pro-social creatures on this planet. And Peter Levine talks about trauma happens in the absence of an empathetic witness. So we need to be around empathetic witnesses who normalize our experience because they're having something similar. So we don't feel like we're wrong, bad, or malfunctioning when we're having the experiences. We normalize what it is to be human. Being human doesn't mean that we're positive all the time. However, we can have a positive outlook. You know, there's post-traumatic stress disorder, there's post-traumatic growth. And being around somebody who not just they see you, but they support you to see you in your entirety. That is the first, those are like, that is the 3 pillars of the first step. And with that support, having a look around and asking yourself, well, what were the messages, whether conscious or unconscious, covert or covert, that I learnt in my upbringing? So a overt lesson I had, and this was my parents trying to look after me, is that as a Black person, I have to work twice as hard for half as much recognition. That is true. Like, I'm not even going to front. That is absolutely
Yeah.
true. But the lesson I learned was I'm always like, it's not safe for me to stop. I always have to bust my ass. The covert lesson I learnt was, in order for me to have a man, which in many cultures you can be as successful as you want to as a woman, you are not truly successful until you have got a long-term male partner, ideally married, and birthed children. So I would have to bust my ass, work twice as hard for half as much, but in the home, I would have to play small. And no matter how magnificent I was because of my overworking antics outside to prove myself as worthy, I couldn't do that indoors
Yeah.
because I would be a threat
Yeah. Yeah.
to my man.
Yeah.
And then another lesson I learned covertly is that women revere women who do really well professionally. You know, there are people, West Africans for sure. I think other Africans as well, but West Africans, like I joke and say, we eat PhDs for breakfast. A woman can have a PhD. She can have all of these things. Outwardly, that's wonderful, but she will also be criticized because that means that she's not looking after her man properly. She's not doing the. So I learned so many kind of like, you can be big out there because you have to be, that's the way that you cope and survive, but in here with us you need to be small and pretend that you don't have all of these wonderful qualities, you don't have all of these things going on. And that wasn't because my parents were the way they were, it's because they were conditioned that way. My parents were born into colonial Sierra Leone. A lot of the cultural values of British colonies were Victorian values,
Yeah.
and those values were impressed upon them and they had to adopt them for their survival. So a lot of survival coping strategies going on, and survival happens in the body.
Yeah.
So it's not, mindset isn't enough, and that slowing down enables you, like Hannah, I think it was the beginning of 2022 was when I had an experience when I actually felt what resentment feels like in my body. Because if you're conditioned to please and to be everything for everyone, you learn how to squash down feelings really quickly. And I
Yeah.
had experiences and I was like, oh, this is what resentment feels like.
Yeah.
And it was refreshing. It was like homemade lemonade on a hot summer's day, because I thought I felt this feeling I felt this feeling when I said no, when I wanted to say yes. I felt this feeling when I said I'm not sure, when I really meant oh hell no. I
Yeah.
felt this feeling when I felt like I'm being taken for granted, but I didn't know what that feeling was. I made it that I was wrong. So now, as soon as resentment starts to rear its head, I know I've got to say no. And what that means is that I say no way more than I ever have before. I say no way more than I say yes. And it just
Yeah.
helps me to realize that all of the yeses I was flashing around previously were due to my conditioning. It's
Yeah.
not, it's not as simple as I was a people pleaser. I was conditioned to be that way. That's not who I am at my
Yeah.
core. So I can start to make different choices.
Yeah. 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 And it's that the first thing that falls away when we're running on survival is connection, not just to other people, but to
Yeah.
ourselves. And there's this misunderstanding that when we start to like slow down and find safety in maybe taking a pause, all of these really powerful things that accumulate and create physiological and emotional resilience over time, is that actually all the stuff that we've been pushing down, that analogy of like the football of our emotions, and we're pushing it down to keep it under the water. But as soon as we take our eye off the ball, or we get tired or we burn out, then that's
Mm-hmm.
going to come out of the water with as much force we've been pushing it down with.
Yeah.
And a lot of the responses, I feel really fucking angry. And like it's years of this building up and there's years of holding and contracting around it. And actually, what happens when we start to learn to not contract around these emotions that actually, as you say, are really, really
Mm-hmm.
important, helpful cues from our body, from our nervous system, from our subconscious, from our true core values of what we stand for and what's important, going, no, I don't want to
Yeah.
do that. That
Yeah.
doesn't feel
Yeah.
good to me.
Yeah.
And So this anger, our relationship to all these different emotions that have been repressed, like what happens when they're healthy and expansive and like, okay, I hear you. What happens if I follow you? What happens if I allow you to move through my system and it not be this shameful thing? Because, you know, as a woman, I shouldn't feel that. I certainly
Yep.
shouldn't voice
Yep.
it. And, you know, all of these are just, these can be such powerful moments of, I'm not turning away from my
No.
resentment right now. When I don't turn away from it, what comes through? Where will it
Mm-hmm.
take me? And how will I feel on the other side of it?
Mm-hmm.
Because like the repression of our emotions, particularly these survival ones, you know, fight being from the anger being from the fight and flight, for example, we're allowing energy to move through us again.
Yeah.
And as you say, when we allow that to move through us, it can be processed, it can be integrated, we can learn from it, we can
Mm-hmm.
feel powerful from it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the capacity to invite in the other stuff, the joy,
Yeah.
the passion, the safety and the pause.
And speaking of
Yeah.
the safety, one of the mistakes we make is when we are hashtag doing the work, when we start to cultivate more safety within ourselves, that is when a lot of the stuff, that football you talk about, that stuff we've frozen, that freeze response starts to thaw and things start coming up. And we think we're doing something wrong. Oh, but I healed that, but I've worked on that. No, actually, when we talk about nervous system safety, it's not, oh yeah, everything's hunky-dory. What we're talking about is that you have enough capacity and flexibility within your nervous system to face these things you haven't been able to face before. And I say to the people I work with, your body now trusts that you have the capacity to face the truth and take care of it, not shame it, not shut it down. It is saying you have built enough self-trust to be able to manage what's been locked away all of these years. And what we need to understand, and why a lot of my work rests on the autonomic nervous system, is if we have been in a state of survival and we haven't been able to express the fullness of our experience, whether it is righteous rage or the most transcendent happiness, when we have worked, when we have lived in suppression, our nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, works in a predictable hierarchy. You've got shut down at the bottom, you've got fight or flight in the middle, then you've got the ventral, social, connected space at the top, where we feel safe enough to take the risk of truly living, where we are risk aware rather than risk averse. We are not over controlling, but we know that we have control over our sense, over ourselves and our experience of life. But because we've got to go up that ladder, we need to go through that fight or flight energy to get to that social connection space. And when you're used to dodging feelings that feel a little bit like a growling tiger or, you know, a roaring, raging tiger, it can feel terrifying to acknowledge that activation. You're not necessarily triggered, but the fight or flight is activated because you've got to pass through it. Can't go over it, you can't go under it, you need to go through it. And again, this is one of the reasons why I love group work. This is one of the reasons why I started a membership community, is because working with another, whether it's one-to-one, with a group as well, you are held, you are affirmed, you are reassured that you have got every right to feel the rage, the anger, the indignation you're feeling, and you can be held whilst you have your experience. You don't need to be fixed. You don't need anybody. Like with this stuff, you know, in the coaching industry, we love a framework, a three-step process. Whilst there are processes and frameworks, and we understand, for example, the predictable hierarchy, there are so many other factors at play, but your body is very, very wise. This piece of tech we exist in has been refined and developed over the entire passage of time. Your body knows what to do. What it requires to be able to do it is for you to be held in a space where you are supported, where you are seen, and where you are not made wrong. So programs like yours and the work I do are essential for people who are working through, whether it's chronic stress, whether it is trauma, whether it is they just feel off and they're not sure why, having that empathetic and boundaried community is I cannot emphasize enough how profound it is. There have been times where people have felt things that on their own they thought would have killed them, like literally, because that
Yeah.
sense of terror and that sense of danger, our body doesn't know the difference between whether or not we're being chased with a gun or we're reliving something that felt very threatening from yesteryear.
Yeah.
But being held by people who are holding you in unconditional positive regard, they're making generous assumptions about you, and they are saying, whatever you are experiencing right now is right, and we are energetically holding you. That can do way more for you than trying to get to the exact root of this particular problem and going back to the source of when it happened in 1973. Again, I'm going to quote Peter Levine. I can't remember the quote properly, but it's something I quote often. He said, "The past doesn't matter when we learn to be present. A healing moment ripples forward and backward, out and about." Something like, all we need is to be present. When you are doing that work in the present, the Hannah that sits before me contains all the Hannahs of the past, so they are going to receive that healing too, and contains all the Hannahs of the future, so you're clearing and creating a pathway for future Hannahs. And doing that whilst being witnessed, chef's bloody kiss. I cannot state enough how important this work is. So sign up for Hannah's program. Come and join my membership.
And buy the book.
And buy my book. My book. Pre-order. You're going to get a really beautiful course called Be Your Nervous System's Best Friend if you purchase my book before the publication date of the 5th of March. And I'm not exaggerating. People, I've taught this before, and my clients have said it's life-changing. So.
Tamu, thank you so much. I'm conscious of your time, and we've gone over by 8 minutes already.
That's normal for me.
Okay,
I always give myself a buffer.
Okay. Biba London Jewelry said, "Can you show me the book again? Give it another flash."
There we go. Women Who Work Too Much. It is available everywhere you buy books. It is available internationally. Look, I've got so many things in here. I've got like all sorts. When I'm proud of this book. I'm really proud of this book. Let me just read something real quick. This is from chapter 7, Cherish Your Connections, because this book really talks about, connection being the genius of our species. Dear one, it's time to take the risk of softening enough to admit that you need to be held and acknowledged too. There are gentle hands waiting to embrace you, if you let them, if you let you.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, can I just share a little experience really quickly before we close? A few years ago, it was just after having my daughter, and I was studying and I was trying to be like the best mum, the best person, done it, like trying to hold it all, work, do all the things, and be seen to be holding all the things. And one of my teachers who I was studying with, she said, "I can see you being a swan right now. You let it show that you're all calm on the surface, but under the water, I can see those legs going right now." And I remember I did this very nervous laugh and just was like, shit, she's seen me, she's seen me. And at first, I just wanted to hide and felt so exposed. But after that moment, I just thought, but I mean, how beautiful that she's just seen me. And she said it with so much love. And I think that was such a huge catalytic moment of I can continue to live these two experiences instead of really being in the room and being in my body and being fully living this life, or I can keep on being split because I'm proving something, because I don't feel like I'm deserving of it, because I feel like I'm never going to be enough unless I'm doing it all to some unmeetable expectation. And it's just speaking to that thing that you said about, collective healing, collective just being in community and being seen in these really honest ways and powerful
100%.
ways can be just that moment of someone feeling seen, can be the catalyst to completely transforming how they see themselves.
Hmm.
So yeah, just thank you
Can
so
you
much
see
for
this?
today.
Did you
I
see
just got,
that?
oh, did it respond to my thumb up?
Yeah. Oh, I
Ah,
see.
I wonder what made the
Me
balloons happen.
too. Let me.
Little Mexican wave.
Oh, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for inviting me
Thank
on.
you so much.
Yeah. Until next time, take wonderful care.
Thank
Bye. See
you.
you.
See you soon. Bye,
Bye.
my love.